Welcome everybody to Passive Cash Flow for Life. We've obviously got some people that are here all the time, so welcome back. Always good to see you. And then for the new people, welcome to Teaching Tuesdays. If you're not aware, I'm not sure how you got here, but thank you for being here. We appreciate you taking the time to share with us. Nicheole, that is going to be doing the talk tonight, has been doing commercial real estate for a little over 25 years. And has had incredible success, thousands of units across many states. And about 11 years ago, she started teaching a class kind of as a give back. And I had been doing a few flips and said, wow, I really don't want to do this anymore. It's more of a job. And I found her class and I took it and it was phenomenal. We've been working together ever since. We actually put the line on class right before COVID. No, we did not know COVID was coming. It would just happened at a good time. And we've kind of decided to do Teaching Tuesdays with a twofold, I guess, objective. One is obviously to promote the online class, which is phenomenal. We're actually having a live class the March 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th right in Baltimore. It does come with the online class. If you can't make that, you can still do the online class, which is huge. It's like 60 hours worth of stuff. It's amazing. So the idea was to obviously promote that, and at the same time kind of expose people to multifamily in small bites, if you will, right? So before you spend, $2,000 for our class or 30 or 40 grand with a lot of the gurus and stuff like that, we're hoping that this will give you a little bit of a taste of the community, right? The Passive Cash Flow for Life community, where we have a lot of members. You're exposed to Nicheole and myself, and today Bob, in terms of some experts in multifamily, and then you can decide, wow, something, this looks really good. Let me kind of take the next step and come to the next one or join the class or whatever it is you want to do. Or, oh my goodness, I'm glad I did this for free because I want to go be I don't know, stockbroker, open a restaurant. Don't open a restaurant. I had a restaurant for a long time. It's horrible, but or do something else. So anyway, so that's kind of where we come from. So today, Nicheole is going to be talking about wholesaling commercial real estate. So Nicheole, it's all yours.
All right, I'm trying to. Hey, so those of you who, thank you for coming, everybody. And I see Jerry is here too. He's another longtime friend of ours. So those of you who are interested in starting to actively buy commercial, you ought to ask my friend Bob Bryanton to put his information in, because he's buying anything that works, that makes a deal. So the numbers are good. I think he might be interested in talking to you, although I can't speak for him. So today what we are going to talk about is wholesaling commercial properties. And what I guess I just want to say to begin with is that this is fairly different, at least in my opinion, than you would do with wholesaling a single family. Um, it's a different beast. Now, primarily when I'm talking commercial, I'm talking apartment buildings, manufactured housing, and self-storage, which is what we buy. It's not easy, just like it's not easy to find a good residential property to wholesale. It's not easy to find a good commercial or multifamily property. And some of the things I'm telling you here with wholesaling is also going to work if what you're interested in doing is kind of being the kind of the kind of the mouse to the elephant, trying to be kind of a bird dog, and or learn how to do this by bringing in a good property with somebody. Most of the good deals, most of the deals that are really out there come from brokers. So brokers have most of the deals out there. So if I was really going to get interested in trying to, James, are you letting people in?
Yes.
Okay, great. But I'm going to ignore that.
Okay.
So if you're really interested in getting into kind of wholesaling multifamily, you need to really know the business a lot. And I think the way to find those deals is probably not through things that are listed. They're going to be things that are gonna on a FISBO, that are on a mailing list. You can actually buy lists that for small commercials, at least, that are 30, 60, 90 days late, kinds of things like you can with single family. But then you have to do some homework. Brokers typically want to see some kind of evidence that you have done this before, or that you have some money, or that you're working with somebody, et cetera, et cetera. Um, if most of the people that are on these calls, at least I think most of them, haven't got a lot of depth in multifamily kind of real estate. And so the people, one of the clear things I would say is that one of the things you really want to make sure you do is, if you find something that's a good deal, you need to find somebody to work with who already has multifamily real estate, and that you have a sense they can close. As interest rates have gone up and mortgage lenders have gotten a little bit more um, uneasy, shall we say, it's harder to have properties successfully underwritten and to be able to close on them. So you really need to find those people who are already successful, who already have real estate holdings and are interested in adding to their portfolio. And so some of that is you're just going to have to do a little bit of homework. Some of the places you tend to find those people are apartment owners associations. Property management companies may be willing to provide some of the people that they work for, or the owners, to put you in contact with them, and some won't. Um, but those are some of the ways I would kind of go about this. And Bob, I would just invite you to jump in on any here that you have, because you would be some of the people that they might be looking to. So as we talk about this, what are some of the things that you would be interested in, or tidbits of information that you would provide?
Well, learning about wholesaling commercial because I've never done it.
Okay.
So
Well,
I'm
you
learning
have.
from the expert.
Well, most of the time, if it's a good deal, I don't want to give it to anybody. I want to keep it. So, but there are things certainly that are not in my buying criteria anymore, on my list of buying criteria. So, I would say in this business, you need to start with finding successful people who might be interested in continuing to add to their portfolio, and then find out what they are looking for, what markets they're in, what are their buying criteria, and then go try and find properties that are going to meet their criteria, as opposed to finding a deal and then having to scramble to find somebody to that's interested in buying that. I would say that one of the things that, if you are, so I'm kind of back up for a minute. James and I have been teaching this, so this is kind of a story. He's been teaching commercial real estate for a while. And in our earlier days, we would come across deals that we didn't necessarily want, and might try and hand them off or wholesale them off to a student. And we've gotten bit more than once by this, where we found a good deal, And the person that we were going to wholesale it to just sort of was going along fine and then just sort of disappeared. And we didn't have enough time to put in somebody else to take over the deal. And what ended up happening is that we ruined a good relationship with somebody who had other multifamily property that they were interested in possibly selling, and we ruined a reputation with a broker. So I think that's one of the reasons, to me at least, it's important that if you find somebody, if you find a good deal, that you have somebody who's going to step in or is likely to step in to that deal and work with you on it to take over. I would also advise that if you find something that's a good deal and you're going to wholesale it, but don't, you ought to think about buying it yourself. So in the end, is this something you would be willing to buy if you could round up the financing and stuff? And that also means that you're likely to hand off a deal that underwrites well to to an end buyer, to somebody you're going to wholesale that deal to. Okay. I would say you start out by picking a couple of markets, and then you find 3 to 6 investors and find out what they're looking for, and then go try and find the property. And there are the 4 questions I'd be asking. What kinds of property are you looking for? Where in the market are you buying? How many units? What unit mix are you looking for? You're trying to build relationships over time. Are they interested in things that need a little bit of work? Do they want something that's a stable property, but it's a reasonable buy, et cetera, et cetera? So you just need to find out what they're looking for. All right. There's a couple of general approaches I would take, at least, to getting these, to trying to wholesale these properties. So how far would I go? So in the residential real estate world, what you typically do is you sign a contract, and then you're going to hand that contract off to somebody, right? In this world, I would not be signing a contract. I don't know about other multifamily investors, but I don't want somebody to sign a contract that I have to step into. I want to be able to, there's certain clauses that I want in my contracts. There's certain things that I want to be able to do. There's certain things I may want to be able to negotiate. So if you have a signed contract, it is unlikely that I'm going to turn around and step into that contract. Particularly if the seller has signed on it too. There's just too many places, unless there's really, really good escape clauses in that contract that I can get out if I can't find the financing that suits me, or there's something in due diligence I don't like. So, but what I would do is go through and get a signed letter of intent, which is basically an agreement in principle with the seller of what the deal looks like. Because there are things that you can do between letter of intent and contract to make changes if you need to. All right, so if you want to get paid nicely for wholesaling a property, you're going to need to do some of the due diligence for that end buyer before you would hand it off. At least I think if you want to get a 1 to 2% of the purchase price, which can be a fairly nice buy. And some of the things I would think would be helpful, and I'm going to get, after I go through this, get Bob to jump on here, what else he would like to kind of see. I think that I would want to do or have somebody have already done the demographic due diligence that they can hand off to me, that they have done a fair amount of market due diligence. So they can tell me what the market is like. Is it going up? Is it going down? What's the competition like a little bit? I would want them to do some of the financial due diligence, at least have enough information in terms of the performance of it over the last year or so, that that I have some information about the finance, what the financial picture of that property looks like. And some of this is going to take time and effort, but those things really shouldn't cost you a lot of money. And you can actually do some of this once you find that there is, looks like the deal might be worth going at. Is there anything else you would like to see somebody able to hand off to you, Bob?
Well, I'd like to know why they want to sell in the first place.
That's a good one. All right. That's really a good one, because that sets up your negotiation kinds of things for where you might be able to go.
And listening to make believe from the brokers on
I'm sorry.
telling you that you can do this, that, or what have you, and fixing it up or doing some inexpensive capex. If
All right.
it's so,
Say more.
if it's so good, why aren't the owners doing it?
Yeah, the other thing I think is sometimes a lot of the properties I'm talking about here, you're not going to be getting them with a broker. These are probably the pocket listings, or not the pocket listings of the brokers, but as a response to your letters and kinds of things like that. I mean, I suspect you can find some deals through brokers, but if it's such a good deal, most of the time those brokers are going to hand it off to some of their better clients. So I agree with that. I especially like the idea of why are they selling and kind of what is their situation. And it can be anything from, they have, particularly right now, I'm seeing a lot of people who are coming up on having to refinance the property because of their mortgage is getting ready to balloon, and they have with the increased interest rate, that property isn't going to successfully be underwritten, so they're looking to try and sell it to somebody else. So that's a good thing to be looking at, because if somebody else is going to have trouble making this work with the current interest rates, you might too. A lot of so whatever you find, make sure you verify and document what you find. So any document, so when you find somebody who is looking to step into the deal, you can hand off some of that information. On the other hand, what I would do to protect my situation is, if I find a good deal and I talk to somebody and they might be interested, I would get a non-compete, non-circumvent for at least 3 to 6 months from them, because a lot of what you're going to be doing is going to help them narrow down where that property is. And what you don't want is somebody kind of going around you if you've done some of this work. So I think that's an important thing to do. If you do all of this work, I think it's reasonable to ask for 1 to 2% of the purchase price as your wholesale fee. Or if you really are interested in learning and getting your foot in the door as a minority owner, you might, instead of taking a wholesale fee, you might ask to have 1-2% interest in the property, and the ability to watch what they're doing and how they go through this. Not all are going to be interested in doing this, because it takes time to try and work with people who are trying to learn the business. But there are others who, I think a lot of us are really interested in helping the next generation. I mean, I don't know about Bob, but I'm getting old and cranky. And so need to hand this off to the younger generation at this point, right? And okay, so the other way you can go about this is that you can find an initial deal and you can do an initial analysis, which is basically a sniff test. And if that works, you can start talking to a broker. And then you can do kind of a draft underwriting where you would come up with some of the value adds you're going to do and when you would put those in and pencil in the numbers. And one of the things we have in our, people who've been through our class, we actually have an electronic spreadsheet that does some of that for you, that you kind of put in kind of your value adds and what you think it's going to do, and it will fill in some of that information. And so you can then hand that, and again, you can get an LOI signed, or at least have a significant discussion going on with a broker or a seller, and then bring your the person you were potentially going to wholesale to into the conversation at this point, to have them start talking. In this scenario, you're not going to do very much of the due diligence. You're just going to look a little bit at the financials, figure out how you might underwrite this, what the deal looks like, and be in the midst of a conversation with the broker, with the seller, where you are beginning to make some progress, and then you would start bringing in people who might be interested in buying it. Those kinds of deals where you've done some of that, I think it's reasonable to ask for $10,000 to $20,000, depending on the cost of the property. So this is a 4 or 5 unit property. That may be a little bit too high, but on the other hand, we routinely get, $5,000 to $10,000 to $15,000 when we wholesale a single family property. One of the things that is different from most residential wholesalers is you're not necessarily looking for something that you can buy at 55 or 60% of the after repaired value. You're looking for something where there is some upside, where the numbers look good, where there's some things you can do to add value, which is going to increase the cash flow of the property. So getting paid, ideally you'd like to get that money up front, but chances are you're not going to get, with a commercial deal, you're not going to get all of it until the deal gets ready to close, because so many of these deals fall out in due diligence, or they fall out when you look at the financials, or lenders won't underwrite it right now. But what you should be doing is get some kind of non-refundable deposit that shows you they're serious. And I would say at least $5,000 on something commercial. And you get a document signed before you hand over the LOI, or you hand over the property to somebody where they're agreeing to pay you something. So you're going to get a contract of sorts. And we just talked about the non-compete, right? Okay. So this is kind of other things to consider. And I put this in red. I don't know what Bob thinks about this, but I strongly don't think you want to sign a contract for somebody else in a commercial deal. Bob, what's your
Main,
thought?
I wouldn't sign a contract with someone else in any deal.
Yeah, well, in residentials, people sign contracts all the time, purchase contracts, when they're going to wholesale a deal to somebody. So they have an executed contract. Or they will put in, such and such person and or assigns so they can hand it off. But a lot of them, those of you who do, so those of you who are actively doing residential wholesaling, is there anybody on the line who's actively doing residential wholesaling now?
Yes,
No?
I am.
What is the standard process? Are you signing a contract for the purchase of the property before you hand it off? What is the standards today?
Primarily, if you're purchasing the property, you basically, get it signed by the actual owner of the property,
Okay,
and then you assign it to another end buyer.
okay. That's what I thought. That was what it used to be when I was doing this more actively, um, but I wasn't sure if it had changed or not. So who is this that was talking? I see the steering wheel or something there, but I don't know who I was talking.
It was Mike Baker.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for saying that. I appreciate that feedback. Okay, so again, in the residential world, relationships are important. In the commercial world, they're essential. It's a small community and we get to know each other. And so it's a smaller brokers, it's smaller buyers, and you don't want to ruin relationships, which is why I was telling you that, story of kind of how I burnt bridges with a couple of people. Just because I don't think we handled it very well either, but relationships are really key in the commercial world. The other thing I'd say is that when you're getting started, offer to help without expecting anything in return, and people are going to be more likely to help you. It's, if you have an abundance mentality, it comes back to you, I think. If you can't use a deal, but you think somebody else can, think about handing off the lead without expecting a lot or anything in return. And if something turns out, I think most of us that are active in the multifamily investing world would do something nice for you in return, send you a little bit of money, send you something. Another consideration is find a good deal, tie it up with an LI, and then offer it to a commercial investor for an option for a portion of the deal. We talked about that a little bit. The thing to know is that you really, in my opinion, you really can't effectively wholesale commercial properties without first learning the business. This is not like residential. There are things you have to be able to figure out when you go to underwrite these, to figure out if it is a good deal and where are the upsides and what's it going to take to get to those upsides. So I'd really say that if you're serious about wanting to learn how to wholesale multifamily real estate, you need to get yourself educated. And so that kind of brings me, James, I'm going to hand it back to James, but I want to, before I hand this back over to James to talk about the class and other things, Bob, what would you add? I know you haven't done any wholesaling, but gosh, you have such a depth in buying these properties. So if you were looking to buy something from something was trying to wholesale you, what else would you say that was important that I didn't talk about?
Well, first off, it is a team effort. You can't do it by yourself. And I have
Amen.
brokers, lawyers, bird dogs,
Do you use
friends and
bird?
neighbors.
Do you use
Sorry?
bird dogs at all to buy, to find properties for you?
No, I do not, but there are those that are out there that can bring them to me. I'm not,
Okay,
I'm not, I'm not trying to get them, but,
okay,
I've lived by the creed that he who wants it least wins in a negotiation.
okay.
So you got to be willing to walk away.
Yeah, you sure do.
If you find that there's a deal that looks great, keep digging until it doesn't look as great, or it's the few that I've found, they're gonna look better than you think. It's
There are a few, yeah. It's tough right now. It's tough right now. All right, James, I'm going to hand it back over to you and then for just a couple of minutes, and then we're going to take some questions from anybody who has any questions about wholesaling and commercial and or anything else you may want to ask
Okay.
as usual.
Do you mind if I share? I'm going to share the email that we sent out to everybody, and then once I'm done, you can reshare this slide. Is that okay?
Yeah, I can. I'm just going to stop sharing right now.
All right. Let's see if I can do this. So a lot of you have probably, let's see.
You were supposed to fix this damn picture.
She did fix it.
No.
Oh, well, all right. Don't look, guys. So so this is what you probably have already gotten this email. If you haven't, I'm sorry, send us your email. We'll make sure to forward this to you. So basically the boot camp is next Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's in Baltimore. And we're going to teach everything basically from A to Z. So how to identify your market, how to, like Bob just mentioned, build your team, how to do a sniff test. You're not underwriting everything for 2 hours that you get like I used to do. How to negotiate. There's a lot of negotiation tactics that you pick up over time. And the best way to learn something is from someone else's experience, right? So how to do self-storage if that interests you. Actually, at our meetup on Wednesday, tomorrow, our live meetup here in Maryland, we're going to have a gentleman that took our class that is a dentist that has bought a bunch of self-storage properties and done really, really well with it. Property management is critical. So we talk about that, how to manage property managers, mobile home parks, how to find those and what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, how to raise money, and how to systematize your business. So the idea is, as you're getting started, you shouldn't have to put in more than 10 hours a week or so is kind of the plan that we come up with. I'm not going to play this video, but you might want to when you get the email. There's 4 or 5 students that are on here that have taken the class that have testimonials. Especially good is the last guy, Alex, who I was just texting back and forth with. We're looking at a property now, who's just phenomenal, done really, really well. If you're local to Maryland, he lives here in Maryland. And then at the same time, this course that we talked about at the beginning, we're kind of sandwiching in that together. We're not charging one thing for the online course and then one thing for the live one. We're actually putting them together. So if you're local and you want to come by for live, great. And you'll still have the online course after that. If you're not local and you want to pay the same price, basically you get the online course is 60 hours and it's there's all this stuff in here and you can look at it when you actually get the email. There's Nicheole, which I thought she fixed the picture. There's me. We clean up pretty well. And the price is $19.97, or you can do 3 payments of $747, which obviously costs you a little bit more, but then you break it out over 3 payments. So I think I'm done there. Nicheole, did you want to share your screen again and then we can take pictures?
We can what?
Do you want to share your screen again and then we
Yeah.
can take questions?
Oh, okay. I thought you said take pictures. I was going,
Maybe I did. I don't know. It's been a long day.
All right. So this is what he already talked about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a couple of things that I just want to talk about here for a minute is that we put all of these, whoops, not there. All right. So over here, if you, this will tell you about the events that's coming up. This is our website with events. If you have questions, send us an email at support@passivecashflowforlife.com. And we record all of these Teaching Tuesdays. Most of them are about half an hour, and then we have some questions. And those all go up on our YouTube channel. And that's our YouTube channel address. And we have probably now, I guess 60 or so classes up there, and they're on kind of a playlist. So we've been doing this for a little over a year now. So you may just want to go take a look and see if there's anything else that piques your interest. And that's kind of all I have to say. And I'm going to open it up. I'm going to stop sharing and we're just going to take questions here. So please, any questions you may have, I'd love to hear them. Hello.
You guys, we have a small enough crowd. I think there's like 20 people on or something like that. So you can just unmute if you want and just ask directly. You don't have to type it into the chat or anything.
So Nicheole, this is Ernie. When you're getting into the multifamily space, because I'm making more of the transition out of the single family,
Uh-huh.
what's a really, besides going into like a 4-unit, 5-unit, what would be a good size that you could either self-manage or just get a local, like PM company to come in and do versus having to have a staff on board?
Yeah.
Like-
So I would say that once you hit 40 units or more, you have enough that you can afford a part-time on-site person. Under 40, you probably need to be thinking about a property management company or self-managing. How big you start out with, meaning, kind of, I'm making this up, 10 to 20 or 20 to 30. A lot of what I think about there is what 20 and below, it's pretty easy to get your hands around to begin with, I think.
Okay.
Once you start getting, 30, 40, not so much, but it's still real manageable. It's still real manageable. The thing is that when you start, if you may be in a different situation, Ernie, because you already have a lot of experience and you probably already have a reasonable balance sheet, right? So the thing is, people coming in without experience and without a good balance sheet are going to need a sponsor. And the bigger the property, the more likely it is you're going to need a sponsor. Sponsors are generally somebody who either has a really a big portfolio with a good global debt coverage ratio, and or has a lot of experience, has a big balance sheet, and what they're basically doing is co-signing the loan for you. And they typically are going to get a % of your deal for doing that, but you're still going to do all of the work. But they're co-signing for your deal. So part of this, in what I'm talking to people about, is in the mind of, is this something that's going to need a sponsor or not? And if you can get away without having a sponsor who's going to take part of your deal, I think that would be a good deal. On the other hand, if you're starting with a 40 unit, 30, 40, 50 unit, having a sponsor isn't a bad thing because they're going to know where a lot of the landmines are if they're already doing some of this, right? And they can help you figure out where some of the issues are going to be and if it's really a good deal or not. And like in the residential world, they're going to look over that deal pretty darn closely before they figure out if they're going to put their money into it. So you have a pair of experienced eyes also looking at the deal. Did that kind of answer your question, Ernie, or can I expand on it a little bit more in some way?
No, I mean, that answers a lot of it, but I'm sure you can expand on it as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to not talk so much.
No, that's understandable. But thank you.
Yeah,
Nicole,
yeah. Hi, Bob.
I always think that what you're most comfortable with is where you start.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
Um, and I would go bigger because it's the same amount of work with a 35 unit as it is a 75 unit.
That's true. What would you weigh in though, whether it when you're fairly new, whether you start, smaller or bigger? And you said where you're comfortable. But what are some of the downsides with starting at a 75 unit as opposed to a 30 unit?
That's kind of the tweener where it's not quite big enough to support a full-time maintenance and full-time management on site. That usually happens at about 100 units.
Hmm.
And in my case, I like working with people, but I can't stand the public. So, so I ended up getting a property management on my first deal, which was 36 units. I cut into my profit tremendously, but I didn't have to deal with the day-to-day crap that goes on. And I think most people think they're buying real estate. They're not, they're buying businesses.
Yeah,
And
amen
each
to that.
property has to be run as a business.
And therein is what separates a successful multifamily investor and single family investor from those who do one or two deals and drop out. It's a business, and you have to treat it and manage it like it's a business. Most multifamily properties are $1 million and up, and so you are in fact buying $1 million business or more. So unlike Bob, when I got started, I hated all those big zeros at the end of things. And so I started out fairly small. So my first multifamily was actually 4 duplexes. It was an 8 unit. And then I moved up to a 40 unit and thought I really knew what I was doing. I got a little too cocky and I got my clock cleaned, so to speak. So, because I didn't really know what I was doing so much. So, you know, I think, well, Bob Rana had a big shoe business before he ever got into multifamily real estate, and I worked for the government. So he already had a lot of business experience going in, and I didn't. So he was probably more comfortable with the bigger numbers and being able to do a big business.
It just didn't scare me. It was just numbers.
Yeah, well, I was scared. So I got over it, but I was scared to begin with. All those numbers, all those zeros were just took a little while to get past that. So
I scared myself on the first house I bought for myself.
yeah, did you? Yeah. We all have those little things. Other questions? That was a good one, Ernie.
So maybe I can help out a little bit here. So and Nicole, you've taught on this many times. Bob, I'd be interested in hearing your input as well. I think a lot of times when people start off, yes, a lot of those zeros can be scary, but I think financially, a lot of people don't have the funds, right, or the equity, if you will, to be able to buy into their first property. So they're like, well, okay, I got to raise some money. So what do you recommend? How do people reach out to? You're an investor. What do you look for when somebody comes to you? Just any suggestions you have for a lot of the people that are newer, that are maybe looking to raise funds to get their first acquisition?
Are you talking to me or to Bob?
I was saying that you've done a wonderful job of explaining this before, and feel free to jump in. But I was wondering on Bob's take as well.
Um, you can't buy the property unless you have a loan lined up. And one of the things that I do when I look at a property, I go to the brokers, mortgage brokers, lenders, and have them size it up before I even do a serious look at it. Because if you can't get a loan or you can't get a big enough loan for it, doesn't make sense to pursue the property.
So what do
Um,
you do when you find a property that has a lot of warts on it, but has some good upside if you can cure those warts? Because it's going to be hard to get a loan on those.
I got relationships.
Okay, so you kind of have figured that, but if you're new, it's kind of hard, isn't sometimes?
It is, and you probably need a key principal.
Yeah,
Yeah. I do
yeah.
that fairly frequently.
Oh, do
I
you,
take,
you
I
act
take,
as the key principal?
yes,
Okay. Everybody hear
yeah,
that? Would you mind typing your email or name
I
into
already
the
did.
chat? Oh, you did. Okay, great. So, all right.
Yeah, I
So,
take 20% of the acquisition fee, 20% of the management's cash flow, and 20% of the management's uh, profit at the end.
on exit, you mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
and a lot of people think that's steep, but it's like, no, do it without me.
Yeah. That's what I was saying about a sponsor. So that's what he's telling you what his role is as a sponsor.
And I don't do recourse loans.
Oh, so okay, so you have to find a non-recourse lender.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that's probably Fannie and Freddie for the most part these days.
for the most part.
So the other thing I would just add to this is, as much as it's going to may seem kind of crazy to some people who've not been in this, it's much harder to get a loan for under $1 million than it is to get a loan for more than million. And it is even harder. I mean, it's even easier to get a loan for 5 million or more, because there's a lot more people in that space because they have to underwrite it too. And it just makes more sense for them if they are putting out more money. So when you start looking to find properties to buy, at the minimum, I would be trying to, something else to put in your hat is to try and find something where you're going to need a loan of $1 million or more. And right now, Fannie has a pretty decent small balance loan that's non-recourse that can be what, 10, 15 years, maybe more. Bob, do you know what they're doing these days?
10 to 12.
10 to 12. Okay. Those are pretty good if you can go get them. The problem is that they don't want a property that's not stable, because they're going to bundle them up and sell them off to Wall Street. And so it has to be probably 85% occupied or more. It has to have reasonable infrastructure. It can't be in a D, C minus D neighborhood. They have all these things that they kind of go through and look at. Other things that I'm forgetting that they don't want, Bob? It's been a while since I got one of these loans.
What you want to do is become best friends with the dust lender.
You want to tell them what a duck lender is, please?
I never can remember the acronym. It's someone that's tied in directly to Fannie and Freddie.
So someone can
Uh,
make the decision on a Fannie or Freddie loan without having to send it into Fannie and Freddie to get it underwritten. Would that be accurate?
Yes, that's much better than I could do.
I don't know the acronym either, but I like your point about taking it to the bank. I think a lot of, especially new investors, feel like they're at odds with the bank. It's kind of them against the bank and trying to convince the bank to finance their deal, as opposed to looking at them as keeping you out of trouble, because if they're not going to underwrite it or they're not going to give you a loan on it, chances are sometimes it's not a very good deal.
Yeah, why do all the work if they're not going to give you a loan?
Right, exactly. So makes sense. So
I would also say that good commercial brokers already have people lined up who are likely to finance the deal. And so if you're buying something through a broker, one of the first things I asked today was, do you have somebody who might lend on this? Who are likely lenders for this deal? Because they probably have already done some of that homework. At least that's been my experience.
Hmm.
All right, we have time for a couple more questions if anybody has any.
Got a question. First off, James and Nicheole, good to see you again, at least virtually.
Hey,
What are you all finding in the opportunity zone space? Has that been a growing area of interest for the members or your clients, participants, or has that not really been an issue?
I don't know that we have really talked about that a lot. That's a good question. So for those of you who may not know, HUD, Housing and Urban Development, basically has done some work to find both urban and rural areas that are challenged in some way or the other. And they will create these zones that they call opportunity zones. And they have some special kinds of fundings. They have some tax breaks depending on different things for those zones. Baltimore has 2 or 3 or 4 opportunity zones. But if you go to HUD and put in opportunity zones, you get a map of the United States, and you click on the state you want, and then you can see where the opportunity zones are. And the thing you need to understand is that while HUD identifies the areas, it's run by local counties and municipalities. So the rules change from one opportunity zone to another. So you have to really figure out, when you find an area you like that might be an area you're interested in investing in, now you need to go find out from that municipality, what are their rules and what are they looking for. You see those opportunities in both the single family space and in the all sorts of commercial spaces. Because they are opportunity zones, a lot of times these areas are not in the most favorable areas in a town or community. And so they sometimes, if you don't really look at those opportunity zones, you would find those properties hard to find lenders for. On the other hand, if you go through some of the people in that opportunity zone area, they can tell you kind of what's being, who are the lenders who are working with them. And they all differ in terms of, what they want to see in people who are going to make bids on things. And so a lot of them are bid kind of areas where you're bidding on certain things. What else would you add that I didn't, Jerry, that I didn't add that you think people need to know? I know you're doing a lot of those kinds of things.
Well, our interest in that is from the tax savings standpoint.
Yeah.
And as much as you can push that tax expense down the road, seems like there's always new ways new tools out that will push that tax expense down further and further.
So I'm sorry, I was answering someone's chat in here. Did you guys talk about what the advantages of an opportunity zone for an investor? Or maybe you covered it. I apologize if you did, but I don't know if people know what that is.
Did I cover that, or what else do I need to, Jerry, what else would you need to say? I thought I did that, but maybe not enough. So most of them are tax advantages. I've bought a couple of properties. In fact, I have a big mobile home park in Yakima, Washington, that was in an opportunity zone. And there were some tax advantages, but more than that, there was a a $50,000 grant to do some upgrades in it. And there was some extra land associated with it. So it really depends. It's jurisdiction by jurisdiction. Is that what you're talking about, James?
Yeah, so I was just wondering, a lot of people think of opportunity zones and don't really understand what it is. And even I'm a little bit limited in my understanding. I guess the thought process was that if you invest in an opportunity zone, the upside, if you will, is that tax deferred or tax free?
It depends.
Hmm.
It depends, but most of them have some kind of tax advantages.
Okay.
The problem, the other side to that is, in a lot of those tax advantages, they come with some rules. One of a common rule is that you can, if it's a multifamily property, you can only rent for somebody that's 60% above poverty level, or you have to hold the rents at a certain level for a certain amount of time.
Right.
Bob, do you have any experience with these?
Not with opportunity zones. I've had properties where the government's my partner,
Okay, yeah.
and you're not in control.
Well, it
If-
depends on how good the tax advantages are. But most of them also come with a big prepayment penalties. If you go to sell, somebody has to assume, and I mean, they just come with some strings. So that's why
Rules.
you yeah, some rules. That's right. They come with rules. So you just need to know what those rules are, and they vary jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So that's one of the things I want you to take away from here, because you know what it is in one part of Baltimore doesn't mean that that's what it is in another county.
Great point.
I think we're at about time. We are right on time.
Mhm.
And I would like to, before we hand it off to our partner, Sharon and Jane, I would like to thank Bob so much for being on and really appreciate this. So I don't know if you knew, Bob, but at 7:30, we switch over to our residential area where we talk about deals and stuff like that in the residential space. So you're
I
more
know
than
nothing
welcome
about
to,
that.
I know, you're more than welcome to stay on, but I am shutting me off, and we are turning this over to our partners, Sharon and Jane. And so I'm muting myself out, and I'm going to turn it over to James and then to Sharon.